think sometimes we also have a lot of aww.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna tell you a Taco Bell story.
All right.
Because it illustrates it perfectly, right? Like we understand that there is a level of smart ass that's like fun, and then we don't want to go beyond that.
The knife in the sentence.
Oh, there's a night. Yeah, I remember that. The first question is, do I have, in order for me to be right, does the other person have to be wrong?
How does one determine what's a big issue or a little issue?
Ooh, that's an interesting question.
Well, there it was right there. Primed up for me. Our question of the week comes from Marvelyn. Marvelyn asks, how do you make time in a relationship for each other when you have careers and kids?
At this time, I'm going to get naked, and you're going to get naked, and we're going to put our skin together, and we're going to see what takes place.
Might end up bumping fuzzies.
You might end up.
Artlist.io.
Hello, and welcome to Rainbow Dreamcatcher,
the Love
Podcast. My name is Nilla. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and relationship coach. I travel the world helping individuals learn the skills they need to have happy and healthy relationships.
And I'm Big Sexy, her loving husband and co-host, here to provide levity.
That's the funny stuff, y'all.
Make the jokey jokes.
Make the jokey jokes.
What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to do part 2 of functional relationships.
Ooh, a sequel.
A sequel. I don't know how many parts are going to be to this one. I mean, obviously it's not comprehensive. There's a lot of different parts of relationships that make it functional.
Right.
I'm curious, what do you think makes our relationship functional? On the spot.
I think a lot of the tools you introduce into our relationship make it very functional. I think the communication that we have built, I think the laughter that we engage a lot in, I think we trust each other, we respect each other, we love each other. We definitely not just enjoy each other's company, but we really like each other.
That's true. That's definitely a bonus.
Yeah. And
I see a lot of people that don't really like the partner that they are with presently. They maybe like them at one point in time, but they don't like them anymore.
Right. So I think that's what makes us functional. I think that we have built up patterns that help us keep the spirit alive, if you will, and keep engaged and check in with one another and see how each other doing. And we're very supportive of each other. So I think that's what we do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I don't know, when I think about functional relationship, not that I want to give people rules, but I do think that there is like a list of do's and don'ts. And I think that that's really helpful to have just an idea of what can be hurtful, what can be harmful, what can we build, what can we avoid, right?
What about you? What do you think makes us do we have a functional relationship?
Wait, what was the question? What makes us the functional relationship?
Yeah, the functional.
I'm sorry. Could you please rephrase the question?
What makes us have a functional relationship?
Would it be terrible if I just said me? No, that's wrong. That's wrong. I sometimes do feel like I have a little bit of a cheat code because I do study and have studied relationships, right? So I do feel like I have some general different inputs into our relationship that makes it different.
Right.
That helps to make it functional. I think the fact that we are willing to learn from each other, I think is a huge part of what helps our relationship to be functional. And that we're willing to learn things together.
Yeah.
Which I think is really great. And I think we give each other a lot of grace. I think, the thing about living with another person is that, you got to think about like your joints, right? Like sometimes you can move around and it's all nice and smooth and limber. And other times you're going to move around, it's going to be like clicking and clacking and irritated and it's not going to feel good. It's going to stick and it's going to rub the wrong way.
Be all stiff and
not moving and irritating. Yeah. Annoying. really getting on my nerves.
Same. I hate when I gotta get up and my body's just like, ugh.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes relationships and partnerships can be like that. And you do have to give people grace that they can't be perfect all the time. We're going to run into some sticky places. You're going to run into some sticky moods. I'm going to run into some sticky moods. And you know, obviously we don't want these things to be a pattern, but we also have to recognize that sometimes we're going to get on each other's nerves.
Right.
And so we have to give each other some grace. And I think we have gotten really good at figuring out where that line is, where, okay, I'm about to get for real annoyed, so I need to turn down something here. I need to de-escalate something here.
Right.
And sometimes that's a joke, or sometimes that's, you know, like just, okay, I'm gonna leave, you know, whatever that might be. But we don't let that get to a point where it festers. I think that that is just a place that we've recognized as immediate that we just protect. And I think that that's really good. That's a good way that we function.
Cool, excellent. Well, let's hop into the continued list of functional relationship do's and don'ts.
Well, here's a big do, and this is something that I think that we do really, really well. And I advise folks that if you want to build a really happy, supportive, and functional relationship, always tell your partner how much they and your relationship mean to you. Don't take things for granted. Express how grateful you are for your good fortune. You can be meek, you can be humble, but you know, appreciation has a particular kind of magic that I think we often overlook because we assume the other person already knows. And I will tell you that it's been my experience. Actually, that's one of the first things I work on with partners when they come to sit down with me. You know, they want to talk about like my problems and my issues, and they get really irritated with me because I want to talk about appreciation. You know? And it's really hard to appreciate my partner when I'm so irritated with you. And it's the balance that we need to be able to see our partner as a whole human being and not just like this monstrous person that's getting on my nerves all the time. Right. So, I mean, that's a good one. That's something I think we incorporate. Would you say we incorporate that daily?
Oh, absolutely.
I think we do that in a couple different ways where we incorporate that daily. One is really formalized, which is, you know, what are you grateful for today? How did that start? When did that start?
You wanted to have introduce gratefulness.
That's right.
And have an air of gratefulness in a relationship. And I think also simultaneously, I was doing, you know, what things make me happy and what I feel as well. And so each day, let's talk about what we're going to be grateful for. I think a lot of it kicked off, you know, when we were in Spain. You know, what are you grateful for today? Let's be grateful. Let's have a mind of gratefulness.
Oh, you know what? I remember now. And actually, this is good. This is a source for folks. If you, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No.
Didn't mean to be interrupted, but it just occurred to me that I actually took that course, The Science of Happiness. If you have not heard about The Science of Happiness, you can find information online. It's really easy to find. It is part of a research project out of UC Berkeley that's been going on for many years now about the types of behaviors that people who are happy, that live healthy and long lives, practice. Right. So you maybe hear like there's a couple of these, right? There's a guy that did a book on blue zones. Have you heard of these blue zones?
No.
So blue zones are places all around the world where people tend to live beyond 100 years old.
Oh, wow. See, I thought, to me, it sounds like, of course, I think of comedy. So I think it's the places around the world where people cuss a lot.
Oh, well, that might be true too.
But I'm sure happy people cuss a lot.
Well, maybe. I mean, like, are they happily cussing? Is that what it is? Like, oh, God darn it.
Oh, my stars and goddess.
Oh, my stars and dollars.
Right.
F.
You know, I think of people like Sam Jackson. He seems very happy every time he says MFer.
Well, of course, because he gets paid like it's like just punching like a like a slot machine every time
he's living in the blue zone.
He's living in the blue zone.
That's not what you mean.
That's not what I mean.
No, blue zone is old people.
it's old people who live long, satisfying, happy, functional lives that, where they have a good quality of life for a good long time. And that kind of looked toward like the technical things, like what kinds of foods were they eating, what kinds of social networks had they created, what were their relationships like. So that was much more comprehensive.
Okay.
The science of happiness is both more broad right, and also more focused on just like the emotional and behavioral.
And I'm assuming part of that behavioral was to be grateful.
Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do with gratitude and awe. And I think that that's something that we keep in our relationship. We keep a lot of gratitude. And then we also keep a lot of awe in our relationship. I think sometimes we kind of kick back and think like, oh, wow, like this is really cool. Right. And I think that that has been really helpful.
And I think sometimes we also have a lot of aw.
Oh, my goodness. Sure. Yeah, we got some of that too. Sure. We're cute. We cute. Yeah. We definitely cute. That's one thing that you can do proactively in your relationship is any kind of gratitude practice. And you can do that for yourself. Even if you're not in a relationship, a gratitude practice is really helpful. There are a couple different ways you can do that. One very standard way is to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for at the end or the beginning of every day, just as a regular practice. Some people use that as a journal prompt. For us, neither one of us are writers, I don't think, in that sense. Like, I'm not
in that sense. I'm not really journaling.
I'm not a journaler, as much as I assign journaling, I feel bad because I'm always like, you should maybe journal, and I don't journal. But if you're not a journaler, even being able to say these things out loud or to share that with another person, which is what we do,
right,
can also just bring a different frame to your day. I think especially if you're having like a terrible day, those are the hardest ones to find something to be grateful for. And I'm always able to find something.
Right.
And something meaningful, not something that's like, I'm just grateful that I woke up today and I opened my eyes and the sun was shining. And it's okay. You can be grateful for those things, but also just grateful for the things that are a part of and present in our lives, which I think has been very helpful.
Yes.
So that's one thing you can do.
Do be grateful.
So that's a do. Let's talk about a don't. And this one is always difficult because sometimes people have a way of playing with each other that can be, when it's fun, but when it's not, it's very painful. And in this, I'm talking about sarcasm.
Okay.
One don't, and this is one that I really, really advise folks to stay away from. It is okay to be witty. It is perfectly okay to be even sometimes sharp. But when you get into the arena with your partner of negative, hurtful, or sarcastic remarks, it can become really easily abusive.
Yeah, that's very caustic too.
It can be really caustic. And I liken it to, I'm going to tell you a Taco Bell story. All right. Because it illustrates it perfectly, right?
The Taco Bell story.
The Taco Bell story. I don't know what I was doing, but you had dropped me off someplace and I was waiting for, I think I was waiting for my car to be done or something.
Okay.
And so, when you're getting your car fixed, sitting in the little place just outside the garage is not the most comfortable place to be. And I didn't want to be sitting there. I was bored. So I figured I'd just go across this Taco Bell. I said, okay, this Taco Bell.
Now I know exactly where we are and what we're talking about.
Right. So I walk across, I sit at this Taco Bell, and, I'm going to be there for a couple of hours. So I've got my computer out and so on and so forth. And presently, at some point in time, a group of teenagers comes in, right? This is maybe 10, 11 kids.
That's a lot.
Well, yeah, but it's Taco Bell.
It's Taco Bell.
And I'm on your turf. I have entered your world. This Taco Bell should not be an adult world, guys. If you're an adult and you're in Taco Bell, reevaluate. But if you got kids, reevaluate. But so these kids are there. They're all having a good time. You can tell they're all good friends. They're all coming from school. They're all laughing and joking. And then somebody starts to play fight.
Ooh.
You ever play fight with somebody?
Yeah, you will.
Hilarious. It was so funny and it was so much fun. And they were giggling and laughing and blah, blah, blah until somebody played just a little too much.
And they were play fighting physically or play fighting verbally?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And it was playful. Like there was no question it was playful.
Right.
Right? Until it wasn't playful. And the instant it wasn't playful, you knew instantly it wasn't playful, but it was quick. Right? Like it wasn't a gradual thing. It wasn't something that anybody could have predicted, that particular moment or that particular touch or that particular thing was going to set it off, but it set it off. And suddenly these kids are not play fighting. These kids are brawling.
Oh, wow.
These kids are fighting, right? So like, food's flying and, the stuff in Taco Bell don't really move. The chairs and stuff don't really move.
Right.
But, people are pulling each other off. Yeah, they're pulling each other off of each other, that kind of thing. Right. But to me, it's the perfect illustration of what happens when we get into that negative, caustic kind of engagement with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because, even if I know this person really well, I don't know what the trigger is.
Right.
I have no way of predicting when I'm going to tip it over the edge. And sometimes, if this is where I like to play, I might sometimes think it's fun to tip it over the edge. So, there's a lot that can come out in a relationship in a very caustic and negative way when sarcasm is the main form of communication or a primary form of communication,
right? Particularly
when it comes to play. You got to think about sarcasm as like you're playing with sharp knives.
Eventually, you're gonna get cut.
Eventually, you're gonna get cut. There's not even a question. Eventually, somebody's gonna get cut. You won't be able to tell how deep the cut is. Sometimes the cuts will be shallow. Sometimes the cuts will be deep. You will not be able to tell when that's happening. And most people are not adept enough to know when to stop. There is always a time where I'm going to be missing clues or missing whatever, or the other person's just not in a good place.
Right.
But it's like taking chunks out of your relationship, right? So even if your relationship is otherwise healthy and sarcasm is a means of communication that you don't use very, very sparingly, it can really be destructive and it can cause a lot of fights. And I advise people not to play fight with each other, please.
Yeah.
That includes things like name calling, names that people don't like.
Yeah, stay away from that.
That was on 90 Day Fiance, by the way. There was one of the couples, there was a guy from, I think he was from South Korea, who was marrying an American woman, and his nickname for her was Piggy.
Piggy. I was going to ask you, this was the Piggy story.
This is the Piggy story.
Yeah. And she hated it.
And she hated it. And she obviously
told him she hated it.
Yeah.
And he ignored it and kept calling her Piggy.
Yeah. And really, when you get to that kind of thing, first you have to consider the source. What is the source of that remark that you're making? And then what's the outcome?
Yeah, right. What's the purpose? What's the goal you're trying to achieve?
And then what's actually happening as a result?
Right.
And what's happening as a result is that you have a person that you love that feels humiliated or feels smaller, disrespected, unloved, right? So, it's not a small thing. And I would tell you that if someone talks to you or treats you in a way that doesn't feel good, that does feel sarcastic and hurtful, that's a real flag. That's something that I would really stop and consider, even if you're kind of a smart ass yourself. Like, we understand that there is a level of smart ass that's like fun, and then we don't want to go beyond that. And in a relationship, you don't even want to get close to the line.
Okay.
Right.
All right. What's another relationship do?
Another relationship do. You do have to learn how to say I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. How did we learn? We definitely went through a period of time where we had to learn how to say I'm sorry to each other. Because I think there was a period of time in our relationship where the sorries were not like connecting.
Instead of saying we're sorry, it's because I don't think we were viewing it from the other person's perspective.
Say more about that.
I think that if let's say you got mad at something that I did.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see it from your perspective of how you viewed that situation and felt about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I instead saw it from my point of view only.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, if I didn't feel I was in the wrong, I don't have anything to apologize for.
Right.
So there was no need to say sorry because I didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
I don't know why you're mad. I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Not seeing it from your point of view. The biggest example of that, I think, was the knife in the sink incident.
Oh, there's a knife. Yeah, I remember that.
Right.
There were many. There were several.
There's several factors,
but there was like the one big one.
And like I sit back and I think about it, I still think about it to this day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, actually when I'm doing dishes and putting knives in the sinks or what have you, I think about it. I didn't see it from your perspective. I knew that I was getting ready to wash dishes. I knew where everything was. I.
Oh, by the way, y'all, just in case just so you want to know what the incident is, because we haven't really said what the incident was.
Oh.
Basically, when we started living together and we started sharing chores, obviously you do things differently. And one of the things that my dear husband would do is he would get a big old sink of water and soap and suds, and he put all the dishes in there, including the sharp knives. Right? Yes. Now, he, knowing where the sharp knives were roughly in the water, could probably safely do the dishes. Now, because we were living in the same space, because I think this was the pandemic.
This was pandemic.
Right,
yeah,
this was pandemic time. So
in our lovely condo, shout out to the beautiful condo.
Beautiful condo.
In Vegas, but
loved it. But it was, it was small, and it was just the two of us. And so I would pass by, and I tend to just, if I see something to do, sometimes I'll just pick it up and do it. And so I would see that the water would be ready and there'd be dishes. And so I would get all ready and stick my fingers in and almost, cut off my fingers because there's a sharp knife in there.
Right.
That, of course, I can't see. So my request was, please don't put sharp knives in the sink water.
Yeah. And my response was, I was about to do the damn dishes.
My response was, but knives in the sink. In the water.
Right. And so that entire time I was not hearing
mm-hmm.
the dangerous aspect. All I was thinking about was I was going to do the dishes. I know where everything is. I
mm-hmm.
instead of seeing it like, oh, well, the possibility you're telling me there's a possibility if you put your hand in the sink, you could get hurt. And I do very much care for your well-being.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so tunnel visioned
mm-hmm.
that I didn't think to say I'm sorry for that. I didn't view it from your aspect until much later.
Right.
And then it made sense, and I apologized, of
mm-hmm.
course, and also worked on not doing that, or at least I really worked on not doing that. Now I put the knives right next to the sink. If I'm doing dishes, like I leave them out so you can see where they are, keep them safe, or make sure they're like in a cup or something that's safe.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always thinking now, I need to be paying attention to her safety. And
which I appreciate.
Yes. And so that's viewing things from each other's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to say we're sorry.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed. And I think it also leads to another good point, because I think this is something that we have. I don't know if this is just maturity, because, after a few decades on the earth, you start to just pick up some things about life. I think it is really important for people to start to observe their need to argue, because often it's not necessarily because something has to be a particular way or one way or the other way, right? Like even with a knife in the sink, right? Like there are a gazillion different ways that these things could be done.
Right.
So I often will ask my the partners that I work with in my private practice and in my coaching, for you to be right, does the other person have to be wrong?
Okay. Now, is this still part of the sorry do?
No. This is
this is
just arguing.
Arguing, just
yeah, just kind of like how to go about arguing.
Right.
Right. The first question is, do I have to, in order for me to be right, does the other person have to be wrong?
Okay.
Now
I have I thought on that, if you
yes.
don't mind. I was actually listening to Trevor Noah
Yes.
on a podcast,
Mhm.
and he was talking about the image of people looking at a statue.
Mhm.
You're behind the statue.
Mhm.
I'm in front of the statue.
Right.
You're saying that statue does not have a face.
Right.
And I'm saying it clearly has a face.
Mhm.
And we're arguing about it. And we're both right.
Mhm.
It's just the perspective we're looking at it from.
Yeah.
From your perspective, the back of the head statue doesn't have a face. If you're looking at the bull in Torremolinos, the front has a full head and horns. The back definitely has a butthole.
It has a butthole. It's so pronounced.
So we're both like, this statue doesn't have a butthole. I can see it. It looks like a starfish. It absolutely does. We're looking at the same thing. We're both looking at the exact same thing, just from different perspectives. And I think that is a great way to think about arguing.
That's true.
Sense,
I think that's true. That's true. And it's definitely true that people are going to have different perspectives of the same event. But I think in this sense, when I'm talking with couples, it's really more about the behavior, right? Because if I'm in an argument with somebody, right, often there is a sense that the other person is wrong, and I must let them know why they're wrong, right? And so if I take the wrongness out of the equation, then I'm really just left with whatever it is I need.
Okay.
Right. So does the other person have to be wrong? Now, sometimes the other person has to be wrong. Right?
I guess it depends on what you're arguing about.
Depending on what you're arguing about. So it's a valid question. I'm not just asking it like a throwaway question, like, how does that support you? Oh, it doesn't, right? Like it's not a leading question.
Right.
But you really but I would ask, because if the other person has to be wrong, then that tells me the kind of conversation I need to have with that person, right? Like, let's go back to the knife in the sink.
Mm-hmm.
In that instance, you have to be wrong because there's a danger and a safety aspect, right? So even though we have different perspectives and that kind of thing, that is a place where if the other person has to be wrong, then that's a place of education. I need to educate that person about what I need.
Okay.
Right? If the other person doesn't have to be wrong, then we just have a difference of opinion. And life is short.
Right.
And I could spend my time arguing about things that have absolutely no meaning. They have no purpose. They're not going to help anything. Nobody's going to even care about it. Right? But we're arguing. And part of it is because folks sometimes have an immature habit of arguing. It's just an immature habit.
Right.
Right. So if you have that immature habit, you want to start to observe that immature habit, that need to be right and to make the other person wrong, and the need to argue about things that are really not going to have a whole lot of substance. So the don't, right, is don't argue about things that don't matter.
Yeah.
Right. Figure out what
really
matters.
Ask yourself, does it matter?
Yeah. And the thing about it is the corollary is right too, which is to definitely argue about the things that matter. You guys should argue about the things that matter. Partners should fight about things that are important, right?
Right.
Fighting about things that are important are necessary.
It's how you learn.
It's how you learn.
It's one of the ways you can learn.
And it's one of the ways to determine if I want to be in this relationship long-term or short-term, right? But those are the big issues. The little issues are just going to get in your way.
Yeah.
So
how does one determine what's a big issue or a little issue?
Whoo, that's an interesting question.
Well, there it was right there. Primed up for me.
A lot of it is going to have to do with, I hate to say this, part of it is the individual, of course.
Okay.
It's hard. So it's hard to answer those kind of questions, and I'll tell you why. The kind of therapy and the kind of work that I do is like looking at a photograph, right? So if you look at the photograph, if you look at the total picture, you see how all the composition comes together. And occasionally, like you'll come in and you'll zoom in on one particular thing. Like let's zoom in on this flower pot, or let's zoom in on this window. And let's really get down to the granular detail. But if I just look and point out like, hey, in this picture, there's a window, you're not going to get the full picture. So I have to kind of zoom back. And that then, of course, brings the full picture, which has a lot of different elements to light, right?
Okay.
So when we talk about, what was your question?
I was wondering how this was going to connect to how does one determine what's a big issue and a little issue.
Right. It depends on what's happening in that picture. Right. And that's going to be different for the different partnerships, right?
Okay.
So I can't
It
tell
varies.
you. It varies. But you know, there are some universal big issues. Money tends to be a universal big issue. Parenting tends to be a universal big issue. Division of labor and housework tends to be a big issue. The amount of time people spend with each other tends to be a big issue. Sex tends to be a big issue. So there are, you know, there are big issues, right? How those play out in other relationships, you know, what people consider big or small.
Now, if you get a couple in session and they're arguing over something that seems to be a little issue, do you help them break it down to analyze whether it's a big issue or a little issue?
No, what I actually do is I have them slow it down. I have them slow down the interaction, because when people are arguing about things, it's not just the topic, it's also the emotions that they are having. Folks don't know, but when your heart rate goes over 100 beats a minute, it is really hard for you to control your emotional reactions. It's just a fact.
That's just science.
It's just science, y'all. So that, especially around things like anger, my heart rate speeds up, my speech speeds up, my respiration speeds up, right? And so a lot of what I do is just have people slow down, which is really, really frustrating, because everything in your body says, go fast, go fast, go fast. But if I'm going to resolve it, right, I can't see anything in boiling water, you know?
Right.
So I've got to be able to still the water a little bit to be able to actually see what the challenges are. So I can't say at that moment whether it's a big issue or a little issue. And it's not ever for me to determine what is a big or little issue for a partnership. It's
and that's why I was going to ask.
It down.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you let them know whether or not a big issue.
Now, if it's a really, here's the real talk though, because you know we're real people, and like I'm always talking theoretical terms. So that if people are fighting over stupid stuff, sometimes I will ask, like, do y'all see that this is? I'll ask them, like, what is valuable to you about this? Right?
Are you always nice about it, or do you sometimes just have to say, do y'all see how stupid this is?
I don't know that I've ever called anybody stupid or said anything was stupid.
Not stupid, but you know.
But
do you see how little this is?
Well, yeah, no, I tend to be very direct. Again, there's this really delicate balance with therapy where I don't tell people what to do, and I don't tell people my opinion, but I do tell people my observations. And in those observations, I might say things like, it appears that this is not an issue that is important to you, and yet you are spending X, Y, and Z amount of time talking about this.
Right. And
that typically is not going to be something in the couple's relationship. It's going to be kind of more like what's happening in therapy. So let's say that people are bickering about something. I'll ask them, is this what you want to use our time to discuss? Right. And if it is, then great. We'll use your time and we'll discuss it. But oftentimes people go, oh, actually, no. No, actually, what we really need to talk about is blah.
Right.
Which is great, right? But I don't ever tell people what their issue should or should not be.
Oh, good. Any other do's or don'ts before I move on?
Are we ready for our question?
That's a you question.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've done a pretty thorough job. We haven't gone through like two or three, something
like that.
I feel like air France. 1 or 2 or 3, 6 hours, 72 hours.
We did a do, we did a don't, we did a do, and we did a don't. So 4.
A do, a don't, a do, a don't.
Do a don't, a do a don't.
Okay, all right.
Do a don't, a do a don't.
So that is part 2 then of do's and don'ts of functional relationship.
All right. Let's get into our question.
What's the question?
Our question of the week comes from Marvelyn. Shout out to Marvelyn. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
Marvelyn asks, how do you make time in a relationship for each other when you have careers and kids?
So it's really tough. But the reality is that folks have to look at it like a priority. And you have to think about what that priority has to look like and how it fits into your particular world. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you've ever learned about or read about sex therapy, Emily Nagoski is one of the most prolific modern writers around sex therapy, sexual health, and sexual connection. Really love her book. She's got several books.
I'm going to have to read up on
them. She's also got a TED Talk about how to maintain sexual connection in long-term committed partnership. And she's got the best analogy, right? So I'm going to share this analogy. It's not mine. It's from Emily Nagoski. Give credit where credit is due. When she talks about when we try to determine what's happening in someone's sex life, like they're not having sex, they can't figure out why, right? So as a therapist, the first thing I'm going to start to ask is what's going on, right? For most people who are in long-term partnership, after a while, sex kind of becomes like one of those social obligations that are usually pretty fun, but like, I don't know, sometimes it'll be kind of a hassle, right? I have other things that I might want to do. And for a lot of us, we'll just decide, you know what, we're not going to go to the party. I'll go to a different party, or there'll be another party later. It's fine. I'm just going to go to the party. But if I want to maintain connection, I'm going to get up. I'm going to put on my clothes. I'm going to do my hair, put on lipstick. And even if I'm tired, I'm going to show up for the party, right? Now, I might get there and decide, I don't like the food here, or the music sucks, or nobody here, it's not really fun here. And I might decide, okay, I'm going to leave the party, but I'm going to set aside the time to do the thing.
Right.
And what we find is that when we set aside the time with intention, not with goal, but with intention, right?
Okay.
That we can start to maintain really solid connection, right? But it means priority. So, for example, and we had, the question was not specifically sexual, but the example is. So if I want to maintain a strong sexual connection, I hate to say this, guys, schedule sex. Schedule a time that says, at this time and on this day, I'm going to get naked and you're going to get naked and we're going to put our skin together and we're going to see what takes place. Right?
Slide up on each other.
And now maybe something happens, or maybe I just go, I'm cold and I want to watch TV. Right? But either way,
we might end up bumping fuzzies.
You might end up bumping fuzzies. But either way, I set aside and I dedicate the time. Now, if I am a parent and I have young kids, that is a huge, monumental investment. So I have to start to look at that on a smaller scale. So it might not be that every week we devote ourselves to going out to a 6-hour, dinner date without the kids. That's maybe not practical. What might be practical is that once a week we sit on the couch and we massage each other's feet and watch television.
Yeah. Schedule a little quick handy business.
Why do you make it sound nasty?
Because it's sexual.
No.
Handy business isn't nasty.
No, we talk about foot massages.
I'm talking about massaging other body parts.
Oh, see, I thought you were talking about getting handsy with the feet. Walk with me in my train of thought.
No, I was saying, you can massage other body parts.
You can do that too, yes. But the point is, and in answer to the question, what you really want to do is figure out a regular, connected time to just spend together. That might be that we cook dinner together once a week. That might be that we share a television show that we enjoy once a week or something. It might be that we give each other a break, right? Whatever that looks like. But the key there is that it's a priority. Just like, if I'm working, I can't just be like, you know what? Something came up. I decided I wasn't going to go to work today. No, it's a priority,
and
right?
You got to commit to it.
And I commit to it and I do it, right? So this is where I ask folks, when you think about your partner, and this is just a real clear question, are you interested in spending time with your partner, or are you committed to spending time with your partner?
Woo.
If I'm interested, whatever comes along that takes my interest, right, will draw away my interest. If I'm committed, I'm going to do what I need to do. That's the difference.
Right.
Right. So if you want to know, it's the hardest question. It's an easy answer. It's a hard thing to do, which is I just have to commit to doing it.
Commit to doing it.
This is one of those things where I just got to do. There's not really like the whole magic. There's no magic, spell here. I just got to do it, and I have to make the time.
If you both have careers and got kids, calendars work wonders.
Scheduling.
And you know when the kids are going to be someplace or when they got to do something. If you got to be somewhere or go somewhere, or you know what time you get off work, you know what time they get off work. You start to schedule it. And when you schedule, you find those windows of opportunity.
And the other thing is you got to stop holding yourself to this idea that you're going to do stuff and not do it tired. As adults, we got to do stuff tired.
It's got to be tired. And I'm also a big fan of not saying, don't think something in your calendar kills your entire day. Like, it bugs me when, if we want to ask somebody to hang out or do something or whatever, and they're like, oh, I got this appointment. Okay, is the appointment the whole day? And I think people view that. People view that I have this one thing on my calendar. I can't do anything else the entire day. That's not true. You can.
Well, and again, it's about priority.
It is about priority. It's about
which is fine. If that thing on your calendar is your priority, great. I get it. But my partner has to be a part of that.
Yes.
And we can't, I sometimes also, this is a phrase I will tell my folks I work with, is that you don't get good at things you don't pay attention to. Like, no one accidentally gets better at piano.
Right.
Right. No one accidentally just happens to get better at a sport every time they try it. You have to invest and pay attention to the things that you want to gain skill in. And our relationship is one of those things that we need to have skills. So I would say start small. When I say people have to spend a lot of time, they often think in big chunks of time. And I want you to think in small chunks of time. As I think about my day, are there 15 minutes that I could commit every day, even if I was tired, right, to sitting down with my partner? I also think that, and this is maybe just a me thing, I really like structured conversations. You know what I mean by structured conversations, because I make this person participate in a structured conversation every single week. Every week, right? Yeah. And it's the exact same conversation. We answer the exact same questions. But it also, because of that, means that we have a baseline for when we connect, so that, I don't have to come up with something like crazily new or different or wonder what we're talking about, or even drift away because, nothing special is happening. But we get a chance to learn what's happening in each other's world. And I really am a fan of scheduling conversations. I'm a fan of scheduling sex. I'm a fan of scheduling moments together, a fan of planning things for each other throughout the week. It's a lot of work.
Scheduling. But you want to do it because you want to ask questions if you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you want, well, you know what? I'm about to give myself some work that I'm not going to give myself. At some point in the future, if folks are interested, I would be happy to just put together a list of the different kinds of scheduled interactions that partners can engage in to support healthy investments of time.
If you ask for it, we will do it.
Yeah, if you ask for it, I'll do it.
There you go. That's the best way. If you want something,
sure,
ask for it.
Sure.
Closed mouths don't get fed.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, you want something, ask for it, and we'll go ahead and put that together for you.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So that was part 2 of do's and don'ts of functional relationship.
Thank you. We appreciate y'all. Be sure guys, if you want to support the podcast, swing on over to Rainbow Dreamcatcher, thelovepodcast.com. That'll take you over to our Patreon. You can sign up there. If you're hearing this, please do us a favor. Go over to the Patreon account, and you can even sign up for free. We just need numbers in there. That really helps us out. So go over there. Swing over to our YouTube channel and just search for Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You get to see our faces there. For the first few episodes, it was just our logo. But after talking with folks, we realized that people want to see us be us. Mm-hmm. And so we started putting up just these videos here.
Yeah. And if this is your first time, welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening. We are definitely taking in all kinds of feedback, and we're actually also wanting to hear more questions. So if this is your first time listening, or if you have been with us the whole way, please take a moment and send us your questions so that we can give you some good information on air. And we also should probably talk about doing some lives. We haven't talked about that, but we should
do a live
stream.
I'm really big on live streaming marquee episodes. So we'll take a look at that and see when one's coming up. We'll get that planned out for y'all.
Yeah, let us know if you want to live stream.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do so. We appreciate y'all. So definitely shout out and count. Next episode, we do have some listener mail. So I definitely want to get into that, and we'll go into hearing from our listeners, what you guys have to say. We appreciate that. But until then,
this has been Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Podcast.
Bye.